Welcome to the State of Mind Virtual Speaker Series. This series has been developed to provide education and support to youth, caregivers, and educators during this challenging time. This series is a collaboration between two local nonprofits, 1 in 5 and MindPeace, and various community mental health partners. We're glad you're here to educate yourself and to learn how to keep your brain in a healthy state of mind.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Ilana Carnavale. I'm the program manager with MindPeace, and we have Danielle Williamson here, and she's gonna cover the topic, Goodbye Stress. Danielle Williamson is an independently licensed master's level social worker licensed through the state of Ohio. She's certified as a trauma practitioner and trainer through STAR Global Network, and a certified 7 Challenges advanced leader for substance use disorders. As a trauma therapist, Danielle provides trauma assessments and trauma-informed care and resilience-focused interventions to clients using evidence-based practice, including SITCAP. SITCAP is a unique approach to trauma treatment that provides the client with opportunity to safely rework past trauma using the sensory memory. This treatment allows for trauma symptoms to be reduced and resilience to be developed and strengthened. Danielle has a diverse work experience and has experience providing mental health and substance abuse treatment to children, adolescents, and adults. She has experience providing therapy to individuals, couples, and families by incorporating evidence-based practices tailored to meet the unique needs of those she serves. She grew up in small town Defiance, Ohio, and moved to Cincinnati about 6 years ago. Has earned her master's degree in social work from the Ohio State University. Go Buckeyes. When not working, she enjoys spending time with her family, friends, and pets. So please welcome with me, Danielle Williamson.
Thank you. So I want to start off with today, we're just going to talk a little bit, some of the objectives that we want to talk about today is, really increasing our knowledge of how the current events like the pandemic are impacting our stress responses. And then the next thing we kind of want to look at is identifying some typical stress responses to like high levels of stress and some warning signs that we may be experiencing some acute stress responses. And then probably most importantly, learn some healthy ways to cope with increased levels of stress. And then also we're going to talk about knowing when and how to get some help. So with that, we have our first poll question. And Alana will let us know. So if they want to enter in the Zoom or through Facebook, you can let us know what part of your life has been most impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. Just give a couple seconds for that. Well, I'll go ahead and get started, and feel free to chime in if you have experience of what parts of your life have you noticed have been the most different, has been most impacted. So for many of us, we experienced school cancellations early on. We kind of switched up to online, virtual, hybrid, blended model learning. We're all wearing masks. There's social distancing requirements, sanitation and cleaning requirements. Businesses were shut down. Many of us spent long periods of time inside the house. A lot of us have been unable to visit family, friends, especially those that are elderly or in nursing homes. And so as a result of that, we are spending a lot of time at home and a lot of time away from our friends and our loved ones. And this loss of routine, normacy, social connectiveness, in combination with financial worries, fears and anxiety about you or your loved ones becoming ill, can cause high levels of stress. And this high levels of stress may make you respond differently than what you do with your everyday stress. So you might find that you typically respond well to stressful situations. You have your go-to coping skills, or you go to people that you're able to talk to. But with the combination of all the stress that you're experiencing and the rapid change that was experienced from the COVID-19 pandemic, you might be finding that you respond a little bit differently than what you normally would to stressful situations. And it's had such a great impact on every aspect of our life. You may also experience like increased worry or fear about how the virus can impact all of us and your loved ones, especially if you are not coming from a safe home. So many of us youth don't live in safe homes or affirming homes. This is especially scary and fearful for LGBTQ youth that might not have affirming homes, and they might have the additional stress and worry about their family members finding out, since they are spending more time at home. In addition to the COVID-19 pandemic, as a nation, we are also experiencing high levels of racial turmoil due to the continued racial injustices, murders targeting people of color. Racism, it has a profound and very lasting effect. It terrorizes and it's traumatizing to youth, families, communities, and nations. So in combination of the current racial turmoil, the injustices, and even the racism and experience, and combination of the COVID-19 pandemic, you can be having a really hard time coping with this increased stress. But there's hope, and healing is possible. We are all kind of grieving the world that once was, or what we thought it was, and are currently on a journey of creating what our new world is looking like and what it's going to be. So I'm going to next talk a little bit about what are some ways that that you have noticed. Our next poll questions are: what are some ways you have noticed you respond differently to stress or emotion since the pandemic? And we'll give that a few seconds. All right, I'm just going to go ahead and jump in on and talk a little bit about some typical responses to high levels of stress, and maybe some warning signs of what it might look like if you're having some acute stress responses. You might find yourself being more stressed out, more worried than usual, with all the rapid change and all the additional stress we had been experiencing. So with us coming around the 5 to 6 month mark now of the pandemic and kind of quarantine, I really want to stress that if you are experiencing any of these things that I'm going to talk about next, and you're finding it really difficult to manage them, or you just feel like you've been dealing with this for a really prolonged period of time, and it's really impacting your schoolwork, your friendships, your relationships with your families, and you're finding it difficult, despite the best efforts to take care of yourself, I'm going to strongly encourage you to seek some help. You don't have to do this or manage this alone. There is help available. And we'll talk a little bit about that towards the end of this presentation. So you may find yourself with this increased stress. You might be feeling a little overwhelmed, frustrated, angry, worried, anxious. You might find yourself just feeling a little bit just in a negative state, really irritable or annoyed with others. Overall, just not feeling at your best self. Sometimes these feelings can also manifest in like physical ways. So sometimes we're not always aware of like how our feelings and our emotions are affecting our body, but it also our mind, but also our whole body. So sometimes you might notice that you might have an increase in headaches. You might have some more muscle tension, or you might notice that you have stomach issues. You might feel really tired or really run down, or or the opposite. You might find it difficult to fall asleep. You might even notice a change in your appetite. You might feel like you're kind of waiting on edge. You're on edge. You're always waiting for the next bad thing to happen. For sometimes we may feel, overwhelming sense of sadness, or we may even cry. You might even lose interest in things that you typically tend to enjoy. You might find yourself spending a lot more time in your room or isolating from your family members. Not talking to your friends as much or your family. You could see some changes in your hygiene. Be mindful of like what your sleep patterns look like. Be mindful of like, are you taking a shower? Are you taking care of yourself? Are you getting up each day and getting dressed? You might find yourself a little bit more cautious about your health, and that's okay. You might find yourself worrying a little bit about going out in public, becoming sick, or being a little bit more scared of germs and what impact they could have on you or your loved ones. You might find it hard to think about much of anything else but the current events and the restrictions and the pandemic overall going on, and feel like you have very little space in your life to think of anything else. So it could make things like focusing on your online schoolwork, going to school, and going to work even a little bit more difficult to stay concentrated and have a really good focus. Right now, when we're experiencing these high levels of stress, it's really, really important for us to really purposely be mindful of how we're dealing with this stress. Unhealthy ways of coping might come up, and for a short period of time, sometimes those can feel like, oh, it's okay, it's not really a big deal. But during high stress times, it can lead to really increased troubles or anxieties. That can include things like drugs, increased use of drugs or alcohol, overeating or undereating, also just that isolation. For some people who might have existing mental health conditions, and even those who have mental health conditions that maybe haven't had symptoms in quite a while, be mindful that some of those symptoms that might have went away, or some symptoms that were manageable, may become more extreme, or you might see some symptoms that have been away for a while come back. Be mindful of those. Some of us might engage in really risky behaviors or self-harming. I just want to, again, strongly encourage you, if you have thoughts of suicide or wanting to harm yourself or others, to make sure you get help. I just really, really want to strongly suggest get help now. Your life matters to me and to many agencies out there willing to help. So one thing that's really, really important, and I think we forget many times, is that we do have control over our emotions. Our emotions do not control us, although it might seem very, very differently sometimes. Whether that emotion is pleasant or uncomfortable, you have the right to choose how much time and energy to spend on that emotion. It's important to identify the emotion that you're experiencing and then work through it. So this includes identifying it, acknowledging it, figuring out what you're going to do about it. What actions do you need to take? And then finding a way to a healthy way to process and cope through that emotion. So for many of us, talking about that is a positive outlet that we can use to process it. Many of us find it very, very difficult to talk about those difficult emotions. And for those of us that do struggle with talking about those emotions, don't worry, there's a lot of ways that you can process through those emotions. Many of us can use different forms like movement, art, and dance, and writing in a journal, or all types of different ways. But the most important thing is you can't ignore it. We all know what happens if you try to ignore a certain response or certain feeling that you're having. many times it doesn't end well. We either ended up exploding or just overall just feeling really horrible with ourselves. So again, it's important that you acknowledge that emotion or feeling exists and identify it and validate that emotion or feeling and decide how much time and energy you're going to allow yourself to feel this way. And then find a healthy way to process through or cope with that emotion. It is also really important to give yourself permission to stop worrying and stop feeling sad. So we're going to move on. So I would like to go to the next poll question if we have any participants on there that would like to contribute. So what are some ways that what are some things that you have done to manage this increased stress that you may have been experiencing?
Danielle, I make sure that I have time to cook a healthy meal for my family and really take time to enjoy that cooking process, which is something I haven't been able to do.
That is great. Do you enjoy cooking?
I do.
That's good. That's good. I think that's a really good one that we'll talk about, is just finding something that you enjoy and pouring into something that you enjoy a lot. All right. So I'm going to share with you some of my favorites, go-tos, and some other evidence-based coping tools that may be helpful for you. But don't worry if I go through all these and you find these don't really work for me, or I've tried that before, it didn't help. Don't worry if that is true, because there are lots and lots more than I will have time to speak on today. If you visit the Mind Peace website and look through their virtual calming rooms, there's many more resources on there that can help you cope. The first thing that I would definitely stress, that is all starts with a purposeful mindset. Be aware of your perceptions now more than ever. Focus on the things that you do have control over. At this time, it may feel like you don't have control over much, but you do. Try reframing things in a positive light. Changing the way we think might not necessarily change our current circumstances, but can help us feel better equipped to deal with the additional stress. There are many ways you can do this. One of my favorite, probably go-to ways of just reframing things and trying to be purposeful every morning when I wake up to have a positive mindset is you can take something as simple as like a little note card, or a Post-it note works really great. And on that Post-it note, you can write some sort of self-affirmation, or maybe just a positive quote or something nice somebody has said to you throughout the day, or something that you just want to hold on and remember, something very positive. And then, so it could be something that says something like, I am enough, I am worthy, I am beautiful. And you take that Post-it note or that note card and you place it somewhere that you know you're going to see very early in the morning. It's not the first thing when you wake up. So it's going to be the first thing that you see, to remind you that you are worthy, you are beautiful, you are strong, whatever that might be. And so every day you could put a different Post-it note up, or you could leave them all up just as a way to remind you. Another way to make it really fun is I often do this around Thanksgiving time, because we really focus on, things like gratitude. You could get a big dry erase board, or even a mirror and a dry erase marker. And on there, you could write things like positive things or things that you are thankful for on there. And you can gather your whole family to do this. So it always feels good, like when we write positive things about ourselves or positive self-affirmations, but to hear those from the people that we care about most can be even more affirming. So that was one other way that I like to do it. It also could be something as simple as, being every day going on your social media or blog, whatever you got going on, and posting a positive motivational quote or self-affirmation on there. And then by doing that, you never know, you could be helping someone else. Maybe someone else needed to hear that positive message today. So another one of my most important coping skills or thing to do or suggestion or whatever you want to call it is make sure that you laugh. Laughter. I mean, research suggests that laughter is truly one of the best medicines. You know, feel free to go read some jokes, watch your favorite comedy, invest in some humor, watch some funny videos on YouTube, you know, embrace that sense of humor. And also one thing that can be really helpful for managing some of our anxieties and our fears is to really do your research on how you can prevent the virus and how you can prevent spreading the virus. Many times our fears and anxieties are fueled by those basic unknowns, you know, and knowledge is power. But you got to be careful, you know, make sure that you're looking for good evidence-based websites. I'm not even going to try to say the word I was going to try to say. So the CDC has a lot of reliable information on the virus and protection. And also, speaking of the media and research, this may be a really, really good time to limit the amount of exposure you're having to the media, especially if you're finding it really hard or difficult to think about anything else. You got to know when it's, you know, when you can look at it at what you got to know when it's time to turn it off. Sometimes it can be very overwhelming and fear inducing. So the media is useful, but it's also damaged. So know your limits and know when to turn it off. So another really difficult thing to do, but a very beneficial thing to do, is try to maintain as much as possible a daily routine or consistency in your schedule. So try to remain, you know, consistent with your sleep. Try going to bed and waking up at the same times each day. Try to remain active. So if before this pandemic and before the quarantine, you worked out frequently, and maybe you were engaged in sports that maybe or maybe not happening right now, try to maintain that same level of activity. So go outside and, you know, enjoy the outdoors and get your exercise in. And then another really, really important thing is try to maintain your study habits. It'll be really important and beneficial for you to, you know, even when those days you are online, to be invested in the same ways that you are when you are in class. So one thing that I always like to tell people, even when, you know, it's okay to have a day where you want to stay in your pajamas. That's okay. It's okay if you want to have a couple of days. It's okay. But one thing that can always be helpful is has anybody, well, I can't ask. This is what's weird about doing online, because we don't really have an audience, right? But they used to say that, you know, it always built your self-confidence if you wore your favorite color, you know, and that you scored better on tests if you were your favorite color that day. It just increases your confidence. But also sometimes just wearing what you want to wear and what you would normally wear for that day can make you feel better. You can dress for the day that you want to have, despite the day you might have. So I like to give this funny example of when we were all on lockdown, and I was very, very struggling with like not having those social connections, and I was kind of feeling not my happiest self. So I woke up one day and it was, you know, March, so it was like fairly warm out day, but I decided that I was going to wear pleather leggings. And I had to go out and make some copies at the office. And, you know, like I wasn't going to interact with many people. I probably wasn't going to see any people, but I was dressed for the day I wanted to have, not necessarily the day that I did have. Now, this didn't really necessarily make anything less stressful. However, it did make things feel better. I did kind of look down at my pants from time to time and chuckle. And also it made me overall feel more confident about myself and confident about my day. And overall, I felt really fierce in my pleather pants, to be honest with you. So try it. Get up one day, put on your best dress, and go out there and go set some limits to really set yourself up for success for that day. The other thing is really make sure that you stay connected with others. While we might be spending a lot more time at home, look for things that maybe you can do safely while social distancing. Taking a hike, doing a virtual party, frequent FaceTime calls, phone calls to your friends and loved ones. Sometimes just talking to a friend or a loved one can be all you need to just feel better. It could also be helpful to connect with your religious or spiritual side. Talk to people you feel comfortable about your feelings, and feel free to give yourself permission again to stop worrying. So take a minute, talk to someone you trust. This could be a coach, it could be a priest, it could be your parent, it could be your teacher, it could be your BFF, or even a therapist or a counselor. And maybe this is a time where you can learn about yourself or another culture. Do some research. Find new ways that you can impact the world in a positive way, especially in light of all the things that are happening in the world today. Look into yourself. Discover new ways of thinking. Seek out others and learn their stories. Maybe there's someone that you really wanted to connect with before all this, or an old friend that you haven't talked to since elementary school. Reach out. Build some new connections, broaden your connections, reach out to someone you always wanted to, but you just never really had the chance or the time to. The other thing that's probably really, really hard to do, especially when we're at home more often and have more access to our refrigerator and our food, is try to maintain a healthy diet. A balanced diet is not only good for you physically, right? Maintaining our weight, maintaining our physical health, but it's also very important for our mental health. So we all been there before. Maybe we've had a difficult day, or our boyfriend or girlfriend breaks up with us, our partner breaks up with us, and we instantly go for the ice cream. And that's okay. It's okay to do that from time to time. I mean, chocolate has always been my go-to. So, and it can make us feel good for probably a really brief period of time, but overall, with the amount of stress that we're feeling, it's probably not going to cut it. And it can lead to some really unhealthy habits if we go down the road. One thing that I'm really, really guilty about is eating when I'm bored. So, and many times I'll think I'm hungry and I'll go to the fridge to get a snack or get something to eat, and I just have to remind myself, am I really, really, truly hungry right now, or am I just bored? So try to keep some healthy snacks around. Be mindful of what your appetite is looking like. Keeping that routine or keeping that normal activity level is going to be really, really important, because that will help you from eating when you are bored. So keeping to those schedules and routines will help with the eating. Also, be mindful of how sugar and even caffeine can really impact you. So it's really important to limit caffeine and energy drinks. And this comes from a daily coffee drinker. But for many of us, you can be sensitive to the things in energy drinks and caffeine, and they can really increase your anxieties and stress overall. So identify what your worries are. Look for patterns and be aware of situations that make you feel particularly more worried than others. When you're in those situations, try relaxing and use some of your coping skills. Another really, really, really important thing, and I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, is exercise. Physical activity, just like a healthy diet, is not only good for us physically, but also is really, really important for that mental health wellness. It can be as intense as like a boot camp workout, or Taibo, I don't know what they do, the PX90, all those intense workouts, to something as simple as taking a brief walk. I think now the gyms are starting to open up. So the more and more you feel comfortable going back to the gyms or the wellness centers, get back in there and maybe bring a friend along. So not only are you exercising, but you're also building those connections and maintaining those important friendships and relationships for you. You can also, go explore. The outside is not closed. So go visit a park, a trail that you maybe have never been before or you always wanted to go to. There are so many awesome places here locally and here in Ohio that you can go to that you will feel like you are in a different place altogether. Another thing that is really, there's a lot of free resources on is yoga. I'm a little biased because I love yoga, but yoga is a great exercise that can be really great for stress relief. There are tons and tons of free videos online from all the way to beginners, to little children, to teens. There's ones that are fun and there's ones that are relaxing, all over YouTube. Or you can even put on your dancing shoes and practice your TikTok routines. The physical activity is physical activity. And it will really help getting those things, the chemicals in your brain going so you can feel better and better equipped to deal with some of the additional stress. Also ask yourself, what are your hobbies? What are your interests? Maybe for a long time you didn't have as much time to spend on some of those hobbies or interests, but now you kind of have a little bit more time. So do it. It can be anything from rearranging the furniture in your room, or with your parents' permission, rearranging the entire furniture in the house, or doing a paint job, or a simple DIY. You could do some reading or journaling, even watching some Netflix, taking a day and just relax and watching Netflix or Hulu or your favorite movie. Or like Alana said, cooking. Many of us really, really like to cook and create new things, right? It could be blogging. Video blogging is a really, really cool thing to do, especially if you're going to different places, or showing off how to do your makeup or build something. Enjoy nature and soak up some of that sun. It's still very, very beautiful right now in Ohio. So get out there and soak up some beautiful scenery, or maybe take up bird watching. And then another thing you can do is arts and crafts. It's like one of my all-time favorite things to do, and probably what I did when we were in the quarantine quite a bit. So there's tons of like Pinterest and YouTube videos for like dollar store arts and crafts, something that can really, really, really help you. Or it even can be something music related. So like music, put your earbuds in and listen to some of your favorite songs. They say music and art is like food for our souls. And sometimes you just need to turn up the music and turn down the world around us. And it can really help us feel better. So overall, in summary, discover and be curious about what brings you joy. And once you find what really, really brings you joy and what brings you some happiness, do more of it. And when you do more of it, share it with the rest of us, share it with the world, so we can also enjoy it. And last, if you remember nothing else from this webinar, please, please remember to give yourself grace. Be kind to others, but most importantly, be kind to yourself. It's okay if you have a bad day. It's okay if you're not as productive as usual. It's okay to have a little meltdown, a temper tantrum, a fight with your friend. It's okay to stay in your PJs all day. It's okay if you don't get that workout in. It's okay if you ate the whole pint of ice cream. It's okay that you said no to a friend to go somewhere. It's okay if you make mistakes. It's okay if you didn't get that homework assignment done. It's okay to be a hot mess sometimes. Give yourself permission and give yourself grace. None of us are perfect. Love your flaws, hot mess and all. Give yourself grace and try again the next day, or even the next day after that. Just don't get stuck there. But if you do find yourself getting stuck there or feeling like those responses, you can't get over the irritability, you can't get over the sadness, you can't go over the anxiety, and it's really, really impacting your ability to complete your schoolwork, your ability to have like healthy relationships and feel like you can relate to other people and feel connected. Please, please, please reach out to a mental health professional. There's hope and healing is always possible. So even if you are not, if you're going virtual at school, and maybe your school is not in person and you don't have a school-based provider, many, many clinicians and agencies are offering telehealth options. And what that is you can receive therapy or other supports from the comfort of your own home. Reach out. I stress it again. Reach out to your friends, your coworker, that trusted adult, or even your school therapist or counselor, or even teacher. Help is available, and again, healing is always possible. You can always search for a provider using the MindPeace website, or again, reaching out to that adult and asking for help to get that referral. There are many programs and agencies out there and ready to help you. If anytime you're feeling like you're at risk of serious harm to yourself or others, or having uncontrollable thoughts of suicide or self-harm, please seek immediate assistance. Cincinnati area and Cincinnati Children has the PERC number. You can also call 911 or go to your local emergency room. In Hamilton County, there's also a text line, which is 839-863, and that's for crisis support. Also, the National Suicide Prevention line is 1-800-273-TALK. So with that said, I really want to take this time and thank everybody for spending this time with me and letting you know that I'm extremely passionate about wellness and taking care of myself and making sure other people know that healing is possible, and it's just as important to be kind to others, to be kind to yourself. With that time, I want to kind of open things up, and hopefully there are people on and people will have some questions or there's some discussion that can take place. So ask away or provide some comments on how you're feeling. What are some things that are helpful for you? What are some things that you might take away from you today and kind of put into practice and see if it works for you?
Danielle, this is John.
Hi, John.
Hi, thanks a lot for sharing what you shared today.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for joining us. So, John, tell me, what have you been doing during this pandemic to kind of take care of yourself?
Well, I live with my parents and we have a pool, so I'm gonna get in the pool after we're done here and
I'm
get
jealous.
some exercise.
I'm truly jealous, John. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah. So keep up the good work. I hope you have a great day.
You too. Thank you, John.
Danielle, there's a question from a parent that happens to be listening right now, and she was wondering, are there any specific recommendations for parents on helping their child deal with stress?
So yes, there are. So one thing that I always stress, and I can say myself as a parent that I oftentimes forget, one of the biggest interventions that we can do just as parents, as humans, as friends, partners, and whatever, one of the biggest things that we can always do is make ourselves available to listen. I know that sounds really kind of basic, but really being present and aware for our children and others can make such a big impact. I mean, think about it, like not just listen to hear what the person is saying, but listen and clarify, and those active listening pieces of really saying like and helping them work through that emotion. So if your kid comes to you, your teen comes to you and says, everything is just getting on my nerves. Or if you see that some of their body language is telling you that they're really aggravated or annoyed, and it seems like they've been like that for a few days, you know, you can help them identify that emotion. And you can say like, hey, you know, Sally, I noticed that you seem really on edge today. Is there something I can do to help? And just remind them that you're there to listen. Or if you're confused about something, ask them to clarify that. So again, I just want to be aware. And I know that sometimes for us as parents, it can be really difficult because we're experiencing the same high levels of stress that our youth might be experiencing. So being really aware of things and things that we're doing for ourselves, and just making sure our body language and the words that come out of our mouth really communicate that I'm here to support you, and I'm here to listen. The other thing you can do is really, really encourage some of those healthy ways of coping and sticking to a routine as much as you possibly can. Also offering reassurance when it is necessary. You'll notice that a lot of times youth and teens will come to us as the adults for reassurance of like, I'm really worried about my grades, and offering like, what can I do to help? Like, can I wake you up? Can I give you reminders? Really giving a lot of positive, again, like the affirmations that we talked about earlier, but really, really focusing on some of the positive things that our youth are doing. Be also, as a parent, just being very aware of any significant change in behavior that you see is just getting worse or not getting better, are very atypical for your youth, and reaching out and getting help. Many times, as you all know, we were all teens at one point of our life, and the last thing we ever wanted to do was talk to our parents. So don't feel bad if your teen or your youth doesn't want to talk to you, but also like encourage them and give them that support you will help them, you know, find someone that they do feel comfortable talking about, you know, some of those difficult emotions. I hope that is helpful for you.
Danielle, thank you. What is one, I get this question a lot, and how do we start developing a routine if we've been off of a routine for so long from the summer and COVID? So how would you kind of prepare a parent and child and to getting back into their routine? Like first steps, I guess I should say.
So, what is interesting, even no routine is actually a routine, right? So we oftentimes like, they say like it takes 2 weeks to make something a habit. But it's, say you kind of got into a routine of just like going with the flow, not really having like, you know, you used to get up and, you know, get ready for school at this time and get on the bus, and those things are kind of gone. So first you got to kind of figure out as a family or as an individual, like, what are we doing with our time now? And what parts of our day do we really enjoy? And what parts of our day are really important? And like, what do I need to make sure I have time in my day to do? So figure out, even though your routine, you don't have much of a routine, you're still doing similar things throughout the day or the week, and kind of figuring out what you want to do, what you want to change. And so the first thing might be is take it in small steps. So if many of us are like having like a virtual, you got to figure out too what works for your family. So thinking about work schedules and being available to support, as well as like, you know, online meetings and things like that. So figure out what you have to do. A planner is a really, really great idea. I mean, if you're like me, I still like using the pen and paper method. But you can also, you know, get a calendar, but, you know, we all have access to our phones. So you can use your phone and set up a calendar of just important meetings and events, and that will kind of help start it in there. But I would also strongly suggest to start it slow. So take it one step at a time. If you know you're going to return to school in like a week or 2 weeks, you know, maybe start a week early of like, okay, what is a reasonable bedtime? Or time for me to go to sleep. Sleep hygiene is really, really important. We really can't be our best self without enough sleep. So like really focusing on that, and maybe every day for like a week, you go to bed a little bit earlier each time. Or maybe you cut back on the electronics or the media just a little bit more each time, just to really prepare yourself. That way it's not another drastic change that you're happening. Really encouraging youth and teens to have a buy-in and say so in their routine. So really letting them take ownership in that is really going to help them really feel in control. And right now they don't feel like they have control. Many of us don't feel like we have control of much of anything. So really helping them kind of come up with a really positive ways that are really going to help motivate them to get through the day. So small steps, figure out what you're doing, figure out what you want to keep on doing. And you know, with this pandemic, you know, many positive things have come out of this. So being able to do more virtual meetings, virtual doctor's appointments, telehealth, and if those things you find convenient and really work for you, you know, find a way to fit that into your regular life from now on in your routine. So figure out what you want your routine to look like. Give yourself time. Try not to do it so abruptly. You know, I like to talk a lot about like, you know, sleep health in general, and talking about like cutting back those caffeine if you know it's difficult for you to fall asleep at night. You know, your hygiene, so still waking up at that same time. But, you know, if you don't have anything to do, you have to fill that with things to do as well. So one thing I really, really want to stress, you know, for parents and teens alike, is just to make sure that like you have things identified to do with that time. Because otherwise it is really hard to feel motivated to do anything but sleep or stay in the bed. So those are my tips for setting up a routine. Practice.
Great. Thanks so much, Danielle. We really appreciate it. So as we wrap up, I wanted to give a special thanks, of course, to Danielle Williamson for this presentation and her expertise. Also, a special thanks to Hamilton County Mental Health and Recovery Services Board and the HOPE Grant. They have helped sponsor the State of Mind series. And that is brought to you by Mind Peace and 1 in 5. And we will be having a post coming up in just another webinar in just a little under, actually it's 15 minutes from now at 7 o'clock. And I'm sorry, an hour and 15 minutes. And that is on managing grief of lost experiences. So you can definitely check out that. And it'll be broadcast live on Facebook through, if you search for 1 in 5, you'll be able to find that. And definitely, if you have any comments, we'd love to hear it. And future postings are also available. You can find them on 1 in 5's website, and that's 1n5.org, or on MindPeace's website, which is mindpeacecincinnati.com. Thank you all for joining us. And Danielle, thanks so much for sharing.
Thank you.
All right, bye.
Bye.
A special thank you to our State of Mind speakers and to you for joining us. More videos and educational resources can be found at 1 in 5's website. If you feel like you or your child is in need of professional support, therapists are available. Please refer to MindPeace's school-based or community resource page. For a mental health crisis or emergencies, patients and families are encouraged to contact their current mental health provider first. This allows the mental health provider who knows your child best to provide support and direction. If your child does not have a mental health provider and they are experiencing a non-life-threatening mental health crisis, you are encouraged to contact the Psychiatric Intake Response Center at Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center. 636-4124. Call 911 or go to the emergency department if you are experiencing a medical emergency, a life-threatening mental health crisis, or are directed to go there by a medical provider. This will help limit the spread of COVID-19 in our community and allow our emergency departments to care for patients with the most critical needs first.